Oh my gosh. From our studios this week again in Tampa and Orlando, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip, and he is Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. On Green Tag, we look at the top news each week in theme parks and discuss why it matters to business professionals. And this week is our 5-year anniversary.
Wow. 5 years.
I know.
So that means, let's see, 52 weeks a year, 5 years. Dang, we've done a lot of shows.
We've done a lot of shows, yeah. We have not missed a week, and they've all been new content. Yeah, it's not, yeah. I mean, we did a few, sometimes we do some pre-recordings here and there, but we haven't
we're both busy because we're both busy professionals. That's why, Philip.
Okay, well, maybe. I don't know what I do.
Or we just weren't available.
I'm back in Florida after having gone to Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood, and now I'm back here. And it occurred to me that, yes, this is our 5-year show. We started in 2020 on September 6th in 2020. And we have been going on since then. We've talked about everything, the shutdowns and posts. And
like we have balloons and streamers and stuff, but
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Can you do that in post? Can you just add balloons and streamers in post, Philip?
Yeah, of course.
Just imagine it. Hold on. We'll just pretend that there's like balloons and streamers dropping. Oh, this is so exciting. Look at all this. Wow.
So I thought about doing a show where we talk about lessons or, any of that stuff, but there's always news. And I think this week's news was interesting enough that we already started like talking before the show. And so it's an interesting thing. So this week we're going to do a little bit of a mashup of things that all have to do with recent safety incidents at theme parks.
And I think that's a good, as a 5th anniversary show, I think that's a good thing, a good topic to talk about, because again, throughout the last 5 years, we have mentioned safety and execution over and over and over and over and over and over again. So to focus on safety, and we will also get into, how can safety be appropriately executed in an experience or an attraction. So yeah, I think it's a good weighty topic to talk about on our 5-year, because it kind of reinforces our commitment, and should be everyone in the industry's commitment, to recommending good, safe practices that, end up not only avoiding guest injuries, avoiding any sort of guest situation, but from strictly a business standpoint, avoiding any sort of lawsuit, litigation, or the absolute destruction of your attraction or experience, because that can happen if a safety issue comes about. There are more than enough theme park rides, more than enough theme park experiences that have literally shut down because of a safety infraction. So let's talk about the most recent and the most current.
And Scott is a safety expert, and I'm just here to talk about things. But so as I mentioned, I went to the opening of Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood, and then I came back here to visit this Horror Nights again for reasons unknown. But to me, I thought this year, we already talked about that. We did a whole episode last week about it, and I just want to say that I've been watching as the crowds die a little bit down. And to me, I still think that first of all, the food is still at both parks enormously successful. Like, I would not be surprised if that food program is probably the thing that's bringing them the most money this year, just because of how both parks have such a robust food offerings, and then they have the dining pass they're testing in Hollywood. So it really is like a food festival. And I think that if you could add a food festival to Halloween Horror, it's like, what could you do to make more money? I know, let's add a food festival to Halloween Horror Night.
And that's exactly right. It goes down to, have we tapped out the market? Can we expand our market anymore? Yeah. And if so, where do we look? And, they can only get so blood, guts, and gory. They can only get so many haunts in, so many houses in, only so many scare zones in. So let's look at, hey, wait a minute. Maybe grownups would like to eat something. Maybe we can tap into a different market if we, get those people who are interested in Halloween, but more interested in cool food, or people who want to do Halloween, but want something that's a little bit elevated from a food standpoint, from a culinary standpoint. And those are the people, by the way, who have the money to spend on the extra things. So it sounds like, it sounds like a really wise choice. It sounds like something that, many parks have talked about over the years. How do we expand without impinging upon our current core audience?
Yeah. And I do want to say, I think, again, like Scott just mentioned, this is a good practice. We've been talking about it for a while. It's a new-ish trend, but IOPA's also identified it. We talked about it in our Outlook, 2025 Outlook before. I mean, we've talked about this as an emerging trend, and the data also backs it up. I just want to put an asterisk on that and say you still have to be reasonable within your target market and within your park and the, basically where the economic status of your attendees, because I am actually shocked at how expensive the food is at Orlando, and whenever food at a food festival is more expensive than Epcot, I think you have a problem. And I think the only reason I think that it's sustainable in the Halloween Horror Nights example is what we talked about in the last show, which is just the brand and just the crazy fanaticism. But I think that if you were a zoo that was doing a Halloween thing, special food, I'm not sure you could quite stretch it that far, because each dish, right? I mean, it's like a cupcake is $12-13, right? A slice of pizza is $15. I mean, that's like, I don't think you could stretch it that far without the kind of the brand mystique, behind it. And then,
and it's also what is the event? What are the other costs surrounding the event? You mentioned a zoo. Zoo Tampa several years ago actually did a dining guide for their Halloween event.
Yep, I remember this. Yep,
and that's why I mentioned it. Yeah, and it was really successful. I mean, they did a really nice job. Yep. But to your point,
it was affordable.
They kept it affordable, or they kept it. I mean, it was probably there are probably some people who went to Zoo Tampa who thought, "Gosh, that's kind of pricey," but you couldn't get the bat wings or the monster cupcakes or whatever. Indianapolis Zoo did the same thing. They did some event only culinary ideas. I always, whenever I pitch any new festival, whether it's Christmas or Halloween or summer or whatever, I always include culinary and merchandise suggestions, simply because I think it makes it for a more rich and robust experience from a creative standpoint, but it's also a way to make the experience more sustainable financially, because you can continue to elevate. So I think your point is well taken, Philip, and that is you have to make certain, and I won't even say price, I will say value, because you can be cheap as heck, but if the stuff looks and tastes like crap, no one's going to buy it. So you have to make certain that the value is there, and you have to make certain that it's a value that falls within the spending demo of your core audience.
Yep. So all that being said, wrapping around to safety now. So the article that I think we'll link to is from DisneyDining.com. And the title is Universal Dives Headfirst into Crisis After Halloween Horror Nights Disaster. So that's definitely on the clickbait region. The different things they mention in this article is about the food and about it running out. We mentioned that already last week's episode about the premium Scream Night and how many people were there, which we talked about last time. They talked about the idea that the frequent fear passes with Express were sold out and have been sold out for a while since opening weekend, which I think happens every year. So I'm not sure. I mean, I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember. But anyway, if you think about it, that means there's already a ton of people with Express that are just recycling every night. And we've talked about that before, because we've talked about how if the line is 90, if 180, Express is 90 already, because there's so many Express people.
Well, and I guess my question is, I don't know what quote unquote sold out means.
Correct.
Where are you capping it? What is the cap? If you're only selling 100 and it's sold out, then gosh, that's a great value and that's a wonderful thing. If there's 10,000 or 100,000 and you're sold out, that means it has very little value. So you have to figure out what that cap is, where this has always been my feeling. It is completely fine to quote unquote sell out of any sort of premium experience, of any sort of guest experience in general, as long as the cap that makes it sold out is reasonable and doesn't impact. You're getting what you're paying for.
Yeah.
In this article, they talk about, they reference guests who are saying they'll never do it again. They felt cheated. They still had to wait. They barely got through all the houses, and they had the premium pass, which
is what I talked about. We talked about that. Yeah. I was there.
And the only thing they said that was premium was the price. So, it's one of those things. I guess my point is, Philip, it's not just you, because, you're grousy. You gripe about
That's true.
This, but this is a bunch of people. Mm-hmm. This is a bunch of people. who may or may not have the same level of experience that you do when it comes to attending haunted attractions. And it's one of those situations that it's okay to sell out as long as you're not a sellout.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You can get greedy. Once you get greedy, then it starts to have diminishing returns. And according to this article, there are many guests at Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando that believe that it's hit that point.
Yeah. And I think we will, again, we talked about this last week, but the only way to know, I mean, people have to start not going, right? Just like the Disney thing, right? We've talked about it since we started the show. Again, another theme of the show, since we started the show, has been prices continually going up at Disney and Genie Plus and all the upcharges and all these things. And it still sells out. So I think that's the challenge we've been coming to more and more, right? Is I think the people that are more theme park fans have seen it as more unaffordable, but again, the parks don't really want us. They want the people who are willing to spend a lot more because they're only going to go once every 10 years.
Philip, how many times have you been to Horror Nights this year?
Exactly.
So they still get you, and we sit here and talk about it's too expensive. So
correct. Exactly. That's exactly the point. Yeah. So I mean, but all that aside,
so it's not too expensive. That's what I'm saying. It's not too expensive.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to continue. I don't think they're going to change anything. Is my point. They're not going to change anything until something tanks. But all that aside, to the safety thing. So I think the thing, aside from the food, that has been the most successful from a branding standpoint has been this partnership with Terrifier. And it's one of those sweet spots where it's a small enough brand, like they're easy to work with because they were able to pull them on panels with them, the director and the original. I mean, they're so easy to work with, they're so accessible, but it got like a cult following and it's like a horror icon. And the character is also like easy because there's no talking, it's no face, it's a mask. It's such an easy character to have multiple people play. And so I think the best thing they've done this year from the branding standpoint is work with Terrifier. And it's one of those elements of working with Terrifier has been to bring the haunted houses to both coasts. And as I mentioned, because the IP is easy to work with in Orlando, they made a water pathway, right? That like a wet way and a dry way, which just makes everybody excited because then everybody can do those before and after trends and show how soaked they get. So it's great from a brand marketing standpoint. But then they're able to bring Art the Clown and let him just be the character, but all throughout both parks. Now, in Hollywood, this was not a problem. I mean, I don't know if it's because you get the Hollywood vibe where people are like, they're used to seeing like Brad Pitt and random people. I've never seen Brad Pitt, but I've seen other random celebrities that just randomly, and you just, like you're trained to just like kind of like look at them or maybe wave or whatever. And you don't like harass them. So there's that training maybe. But like, so in Hollywood, when I went for the media night, I went there and I think I saw him 5 or 6 times. I mean, we like clearly they had a whole team of art characters because he was like everywhere and he was in different costumes and outfits and he was just doing different things and he was just hanging out. We saw him all the time. And the girl that I brought with me was also an actress and she had like some contacts and stuff in. So he loved picking on her and they would have like staring contests, and they would just do a bunch of stuff. And we saw him all the time. Okay. But in Florida, this is not the case. In Florida, it has become a problem. And when I have still never seen him in Florida, by the way, like this is the asterisk. However, I have friends that have, and I have I've looked online specifically for videos because I haven't seen him and I want to kind of see what it's like. And now it's becoming a thing where he's becoming harassed and chased. And I've started to watch all these videos of it, like kind of becoming worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And he's supposed to be a roaming character, but now it seems like Universal is considering pulling him into a more safe, enclosed space just because guests are just being crazy. People are following him around with flashlights. People are blocking his way. People are trying to take props. People are just doing all this. Just the behavior is just insane about this. And this is where we finally get to the safety portion. Because Scott, I think you have a lot more experience in this. I'm just looking at it and I'm just like, I'm one of those things where I'm just baffled. Like I'm surprised. I'm not even surprised. And I am. It's like one of those things where you're like, you know it was inevitable in like Florida because of the fanaticism that you get, but you were hoping that it wouldn't, it wouldn't go there, right? Like I'm not surprised, but I'm just like sad because
Well, to your
I'm
point,
like,
I mean, with celebrities in California, the reason people are trained to behave in a certain way is if you go up and harass Brad Pitt, what happens?
yeah,
You get arrested.
yeah,
You get taken away. One of his guys takes you away, then you get arrested. You know, so they didn't take that into consideration here. They haven't trained the audience here in Florida.
Yeah. And I will say the only situation I saw firsthand was actually last night. And it was with another roaming character, which is the Grabber. And he's medium roaming, like he can roam, but he's supposed to stay around his black phone booth, but he can roam in that whole area. And actually he only had one handler, which the fact that we have to say he only has one handler is crazy because I believe most of the Disney parks only give them one handler. But he was being harassed by teens and they were just like, oh, do this and do that. And they were like, I mean, it was like, I had never seen people get that close to a character. And then he was also like touching some of the teens, not in a bad way, but like kind of like, he had his like prop and he was putting his prop really close to their face and they would like grab it or this and that. And I was like, this is behavior that is like, no wonder if they're doing this with Grabber, and then the handler was like distracted over in a corner or whatever. And the handler was like telling me, he's like, oh, I hate these teenagers. They're so ridiculous this year and everything is crazy. And I was like, yeah, but like you're letting them do it. I mean,
yeah, like, when there's no follow-up, when there's no, they don't get in trouble for it. When you don't get in trouble for it, you keep doing it. That's reinforcement, it also, based on that description alone, and some of the videos that I've seen as well with Art the Clown, I look at it and go, okay, before I would pull him from the streets and put him in a safe, little stage location, I would go back and do a complete retraining because, I've done a lot of strolling characters. I've done a lot of strolling characters at Halloween time, in and about without a handler. Now, granted, I am 6'4" and I'm not a slender person, so I'm a pretty imposing character to begin with. But that said, that doesn't stop 12-year-old girls who want to get content for social media. So exactly. they're gonna do whatever they want to do and try to get away with it. And I use 12-year-old girls because 12-year-old girls, of course, know everything. Just ask them. So so the challenge there is to make certain that A, the training is right, B, the lighting is right, because people, if you think about it, when you go to any Halloween event, you're, for the most part, getting people all hyped up on either alcohol, sugar, or just adrenaline and scaring them in dark places. So they're going to fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. Those are the four options. And fighting, which I think we'll talk about a little bit more later, but the fawning is sort of trying to ingratiate yourself with the person that has frightened you, and that is so annoying if you're trying to be a terror character. Yeah. It's like they want to be your best bud so that they can get away, they can become who you are. That's what they want, is to be your best bud. And the strongest way to get away from that is to get away from that, to turn away. Don't give them the opportunity to become your buddy as a monster character. And if you can't frighten them away, then turn and walk away. And then have your handler come in. Once you walk away, then have your handler come in and make sure that they don't follow you. Yep. That's how I would train somebody. I also think that when you start talking about invading people's privacy or not privacy, invading people's personal space, that's where the moment you stay longer than a second in someone's personal space, you've just invited some sort of retribution. You've just invited some sort of follow-up. And it's also reading the crowd. That's why I say this is a training issue to me.
Yes.
Reading the crowd. Understand, I can go and mess with these people and they'll have a good time with it. If I do the same thing with these people, they're going to either get up in my face, they're going to push me away. I scare the 15-year-old football player who's on a date with his girlfriend and he looks like a fool. So now the only recompense he has is to hit me. So you have to read your crowd.
Actually, now that you're mentioning that, well, of course, this is why I brought this to you, Scott, because you have the experience in this. But now that you're mentioning it, I'm like, maybe this is part of another trend we've been talking about forever since the show started, which is the casting and the staffing
and the training
and how a lot, maybe it's because we've talked about for a while how like so many people during the pandemic, they left the sector, and it's been like been trying to build up your talent pool. And maybe this is one of those where like they just have people that have not, actors that have not had this type of training before, and they just don't know how to diffuse it. And also we also, I don't want to like put, like shade on the younger generation, but we've also talked about how because of the pandemic and because of the less socialization in that generation, that you do have a generation of kids that just don't know how to have
interact with real people.
And so maybe these two things are colliding where you're like, oh, like they don't know how to interact. The actors, maybe the actors are also young enough, because some of these I'm sure are barely 18.
Of course. Yes, I think I agree with you on all of these topics. I think what it basically comes down to is first of all, they haven't set up the parameters of what is acceptable behavior and what is not within the parks themselves. And B, it sounds like, and I don't know because I'm not involved with the project at all, but it sounds like the training is not necessarily the strongest either. People automatically assume I'm playing Art the Clown. People will be afraid of me, but they won't, because they have Art the Clown on their t-shirt. Yeah. So any character that you can have on a t-shirt is not going to kill you. They've already suspended their disbelief, or they've already, it basically ignored the brand standard of what Art the Clown stands for. And so they're just going to try to get Art the Clown to be their buddy, to do something fun, because they know he's not going to hurt them. Yeah. So what they have to do is figure out, okay, if he can't hurt them in revenge, what can he do? He can turn and walk away so you don't get your content.
Yeah, that's right.
They've got to establish those guidelines, just like you talked about in California. In California, when you see a celebrity, you maintain a distance. And the reason you maintain a distance is because one of the celebrity's people, whether you know who they are or not, are going to come and move you out of their way. Yeah. And then perhaps involve law enforcement. So the audience has been trained there, not so much in Florida.
Yeah, I agree. That's an excellent way of putting it, because I think about in California when we actually kept seeing art like all night, and I literally was like, how many are there, or like how are we seeing art all? He felt like he was everywhere in California.
That's great. That's what it should be.
That's what it should be. And also, but with us, and I was rolling with my camera. I mean, we were rolling, and we literally, we ignored him for the most part. And he came up to us multiple times, like, but we just were like, let's walk past him, let's just walk by. And he would come up, and then like he would stare at Jen, who I was with, the actress I was with, and then she would just stare back. And I think that was one of those where an interaction that he didn't expect, because she would just like stare, and he would stare, and they would just stare at each other, or he would do something or whatever, and then he would move on. You just let him do his thing. You keep walking. He does his thing. If he interacts with you, great. If not, keep moving.
Part of the training for a scare actor in an uncontrolled situation is, once again, reading your crowd, reading your audience. Who do you want to engage with? You can't do the same interaction with every single person, because different people will react differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you also have to recognize, okay, I've got this bit, and if the beginning of the bit doesn't work, I have to have an immediate pivot. I've got to have an immediate improvisation to head it out, so I don't look foolish, get hurt, get cornered, get chased, get grabbed, whatever.
And I just think you're right. The training in Hollywood, and that was the other thing I didn't mention at the top of the show, but basically the big everybody is always like, Orlando is better than Hollywood, or Hollywood's better. Everyone's always has these opinions about like which is better, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, the reality is, we talked about before, they're separate events with separate situations, right? With entirely
separate audiences.
And separate audiences. And so I don't think it's good to compare. But I think, as I've always said, the biggest thing is your talent pool. That is the biggest difference. And so in Hollywood, the houses are designed to have more acting roles. So it's not just the scare zones. And this year, I think that's why It's so much easy. Basically, it's so much easier to get art the clowns in Hollywood, and that's probably why they have so many of them. They're more highly trained because they have so much a big acting pool there, as opposed to in Florida. But also the houses in Florida, all of the actors in the houses in Florida, as always, are just animatronics. Basically, they just pop out of corners and do the same thing over and over. But you have in Hollywood,
and all the Streetmosphere performers walk by and stare at you.
Yes, exactly. And you have in Hollywood where you do have, they are trained improv folks and they do everything that you mentioned, and they switch up their tactics. And they also, you have people in the haunted houses that execute scenes. They will do acting inside the haunted house. You have Jason that pops out and he shoots a girl with an arrow, and it's two actors and they do that like all night. And it's
a great scene.
It's a great scene. It's movement based, right? And it's like, that happens in California. It could never happen in Florida just because of the staff.
Well, they have done that at times in Florida. The challenge there is because Florida has such a capacity push that, unfortunately, if there is a scene that has to be reset like that, I would say 75% of the people who go through the house miss it.
Yeah.
Because they have to reset and get ready to go again.
It is crazy.
Also, I saw that happen years and years and years ago in the Nevermore house that they did about Edgar Allan Poe. There was a great scene, but I would say maybe 25% of the people who actually went through ever saw it, because the reset was horrendous.
Yeah.
Took forever. But we're not the only ones talking about safety. That's the important thing.
I was like, we haven't even got to the next.
I know. So I'm moving aside.
Yeah. So basically, there was also an incident this week at Hershey Park, and anyway, so just to outline the incident, basically, there's a young boy. He got separated from his parents. The parents kind of immediately contacted the park, and they were looking for him. But where they found him was actually on the monorail tracks, like he's walking on monorail tracks. And nobody knows how he got on the tracks because the station was like locked off. Everything was secured, all that. The monorail is not active, so it's inactive monorail, which hence why the station and the area were already closed off, because it's an inactive monorail. And so it's a closed site. So the video that went viral and got picked up by literally everyone is a video of a crowd of people like shouting at the boy. And then there are these two men who are not related to the parents or their party at all, who just climb on top of a building, like an adjacent building, and then get onto the monorail tracks and get the boy and bring him down. And so he was fine. The boy was fine. The whole incident probably took, I think they said 20 minutes, where he was randomly at the monorail gate area-ish. So maybe 20, 30 minutes the whole situation took. And he was returned and safe and everything was fine. But this went all over. And of course, this has the bad timing of being just a month away from an accidental drowning at the Hershey Park water park, which was deemed by everybody an accident because, they were like, they had 100 lifeguards there, and it was just a complete accident that was not at all the park of the fault of the park. But it's everywhere. It's everywhere. The head president of IAPA had to do a segment on today where he talked about how the injuries per million in attendees actually went down by 51%. Oh, and that basically parks have never been safer, and that in both of these incidents were not where the park was doing everything they could, and that they could be reasonably expected to do.
Well, and I think that what this reminds us of is safety is a journey, not an end result. You never know how safe you are. Obviously, a child in a completely quote unquote lockdown cannot access. Well, obviously they can access. So you got to go back and review, where did he get through? How did he get through? How do we fill that in? Because he's a kid. He doesn't know the difference. The fact that you've got the two adults who are able to climb on a building and get on the track, that concerns me as well. I appreciate them being a good Samaritan. I think that is exactly the right thing to do. But the fact that they could means that there's a second issue. Yeah. If they could get on the tracks, it means there's a second issue. Because quite honestly, and if you search the internet long enough, well, it won't take that long, you will find so many videos of people in places that are locked off, secure, closed. There are entire channels of abandoned theme parks, people who have broken into abandoned theme parks, or even behind the scenes at working theme parks, and getting, that video, that content, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So safety is always going to be a living document. Your safety plan is always going to be a living document. And this is just a reminder. And thank goodness nothing happened to the child. I think that's great. Some people have said, well, the parents just turned away for a moment, and then he was on the monorail track. Well, unless there was a transporter involved, I don't think that happened. Okay. The kid had to have been missing for a little while. Now, I'm not a parent, so I'm not going to sit here and backseat parent. It is very possible that they were panicked and looking for the child. They were looking on the right and he was on the left. That's completely, I get it. But, there's so many factors involved there that we just either don't know, haven't figured out yet, or have not been reported. Yeah. The reason this is an issue is because, again, once the media gets a hold of a safety situation for a large theme park, they're going to shake it like a dog shakes a possum. It's one of those situations where it's far greater news than someone slipped and fell in the grocery store. And there are people who slip and fall in grocery stores and have to be taken to the hospital every single day in almost every single community. But a small child who was not injured on a monorail track in a theme park is much sexier news. So we have to kind of weigh that. So at the same time, I'm saying, yes, this is a great opportunity. In fact, if I were the safety guy at where are we? Hershey Park. If I were the safety guy at Hershey Park, the first thing I would do is go, thank you for helping us find yet another way we can be safer, because the child was not injured and it was another opportunity for us to ramp up our safety. And of course, everyone's going to come back and say, well, it wasn't safe before. We thought it was. But no matter how safe you think it's going to be, and again, parents, you know this, your kids are going to find a way to get to where they want to be. So it's another opportunity to get even safer. So I'm glad Jakob from IAPA spoke out about it again, just to reinforce people, it's not unsafe. It's not more unsafe than it's ever been. It's safer than it's ever been to be in a theme park.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I think we're going to have to continue the safety discussion in Unhinged, because I'm already out of time. I don't even.
Oh my God. We got talking about Halloween too, so that didn't help us today. Right. So anyway, well, guys, thank you so much for being with us for 5 years. For those of you who've started with us at the very beginning, and for those of you who are recently joined, here's to another 5 years. Hopefully, we'll go way into the future. And until next week, on behalf of Philip and myself, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and we will see you in 7 days.